Richard, somebody who was very dear to us. This snowy weather reminds me of one of Richard's favorite quotes, which was, "I had a lovely time. It wasn't tonight, but I had a lovely time." But no, very grateful that you have all braved our weather to come out and celebrate the life of our dear friend. And just before we get started, I would like to say an enormous thank you to Andrew and Andrea. This is, we're happy to do it, but it's been a lot to organize, and I personally am deeply grateful for their support, not just for this evening, but since Richard was ill in hospital. They have been tremendous. So thank you very much to both of you. It means a lot. Right. So, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Ross Morrow, but I think all of you know me anyway, so I don't need to do that. But I also just want to say, many of you will remember Richard's custom-made red tuxedo that Alfred Sung made for him that he wore happily on many occasions. So Richard, I am wearing this red vest for you. And at this time, I would like to call upon Brian, Richard's brother, to say some words. Thank you.
I have some fortification. I hope I don't need it. Anyway, I'd like to thank all you. Can everyone hear me okay? I'd like to thank all the people involved with this for putting this on for Richard. And it's obvious they did a lot of work, and they not only did a lot of work, they did a lot of good work. So congratulations. Thank you to all those people. As you know, Richard was my older brother and will always be my older brother. And we all know we've all lost friends and family, but boy, losing your only brother is not fun. Anyway, you struggle through these events, and I'm doing the best I can. I'm trying not to break down, so bear with me. Richard and I were 6 years apart, and when we were kids, we didn't spend much time together for that very reason. But as we get older, we grew closer and closer. So, as most of you know, we went on many, many trips together, and what fun we had, and all the experiences we had, and been to Denmark many, many times, and our passion for Holderville House was unparalleled, I'm sure. Spending money down there and putting roofs on and fixing stuff up, but that's what we did. And every year Richard would go home for a couple of weeks, and we would paint and scrape and do all kinds of stuff, go on little adventures, and what fun we had. And as you know, Richard was very proud of his Danish heritage, as am I, and I tried to talk Richard into a tattoo, but there's Denmark and Canada. So we're both very proud of our Danish heritage, as we were our Canadian heritage. So that being said, I'm not going to take up too much time. I've got almost through this without breaking down, which is quite an achievement. So congratulations to me. But once again, thank you all for coming out on a not so nice night. Ross, once again, thanks for all of your efforts. And I know that Richard is not going to be forgotten. He has a wonderful group of friends, some of whom I've met just tonight, some of whom I've known for quite a while. But you know, one of the achievements in life would be to have a great bunch of friends who show up and are there for you. So to all of you, I congratulate you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian. I met Richard 40 years ago. I had just graduated from university and was working downtown, and somehow I started straying down to the east end of Queen Street, where some of you at another institution worked, or still do. I met Richard there, and To say that he had a profound impact on my life would be an understatement. As I got to know Richard better, I started doing shows with him. We traveled. And you know, when you start at the bottom of this business, sometimes you have to take all the leftovers. And so when I was buying silver, a lot of the things I bought needed repair and restoration, which I started doing myself. And one day Richard said to me, "You should be a silversmith." And that became my career path. And that involved traveling overseas. I studied silversmithing in Ireland, but it was Richard who lit the spark for what became my career. And I think for Richard, the crowning glory of that was walking by a showcase at the Victoria and Albert Museum and looking down and seeing a piece of silver that I had made. And he called me in great excitement to tell me that he had seen a piece of my silver at the V&A Museum. And I will always be grateful for that push and suggestion that Richard made for me to follow that career. We did many other things together. We traveled, we did shows, but it will be that part of my life that will be with me forever. And for that, I am very grateful, and I will miss him very much. And I would now like to call upon Dr. Peter Kalgren to also share some memories. Peter?
Thank you, Ross. I'm always better speaking from a prepared text. Remembering Richard. I first met Richard Flensted-Holder around 1980. We became good friends and possibly bonded more closely because of our Scandinavian heritage. Richard's mother was Danish, my mother was Finnish, and my father was Swedish. I want to pay tribute to two facets of Richard's persona, the Silver Scholar and the Friend. In the 1980s, curators in the European Department were asked to define their areas of specialty and responsibility for the collections at the Royal Ontario Museum. I chose silver because my master's thesis was on silver. Most of my silver contacts were in England. Richard was one of the few knowledgeable Torontonians with whom I could discuss silver. He shared books, auction catalogs, and opinions. During the 1990s, he evaluated very important silver donations to the Royal Ontario Museum. Usually, curators had to go outside of Canada to find experienced appraisers. Richard did the work and did it right. Richard was also a donor to the Royal Ontario Museum, the National Gallery of Canada, and other institutions. Richard was always testing his knowledge and doing research. Important silver dealers in London are often backed by a group of investors or supplied by a huge chain of pickers throughout the British Isles. Richard pursued objects carefully on his own, but was only too happy to assist collectors and institutions in acquiring objects. Several of his prized finds are in major museums in the USA. This includes a rare engraved American colonial period tankard in the Garvin collection at Yale, and a plate by Horning, a French silversmith who did high-quality work in the mid-1700s during the Rococo period. Richard bought the Horning plate the second time it appeared at a Waddington's auction because he discovered its importance through research. It was later acquired by the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I often wonder if the Horning plate has any connection to the Horning family who founded Horning's Mills, today a sleepy little hamlet near Shelburne, Ontario. Richard appreciated a wide range of friends and contacts. I was one of those who phoned him early every morning to confirm that we were both still alive and to discuss the events and challenges in our lives. Always cheerful and pleasant, he had an uncanny way of providing useful encouragement and perspective on situations. Perhaps he was equipped to be more supportive and understanding of others because of the situations he had dealt with in life. When my partner Gordon Howland died in 1995, Richard put me in touch with Michael Haddad, who helped with Gordon's estate. In the years that followed, I was a bit adrift and often speculating on what I should do. Richard's advice was firm and positive. This is life. It is not a dress rehearsal. His idea was to embrace life and enjoy it, whether it was friends, food, wine, music, books, or antiques. He was especially grateful for the trips that he shared with his brother Brian. I stand here as someone who came to appreciate Richard as his best friend. I know that there are many here or tuning in who feel the same way. Richard defined one of the important rules of life, that one must first be a friend to have friends.
Thank you very much, Peter. And now I would like to ask Dorothea Burston to come and share some memories.
I met Richard at the Harbourfront Antique Market, first as a customer and then as a friend, and we shared a 50-year friendship. Richard was modest personally, almost frugal, but he was very generous to all his friends, not only with his time but also financially. He helped a lot of people during the awful AIDS crisis, and he was always ready to support a friend when he needed it. Richard's silver dealing started more as a hobby, with cigarette cases and old spoons and so. But due to diligent research and he soon advanced to very important pieces which he sold to museums, but also consigned many of his finds to Christie's New York, where he enjoyed a good relationship with Jean Sloan, Juliette Nusser, Christopher Hartop, and Jenny Pittman. These are all very important people in the 1990s in the silver world in New York. He loved his apartment in New York. He always used to say, I have a place at 84th and Park. He was a very attentive host and always lined up in the morning for Met opera tickets so that we had a program in the evening. And he was also a member of the New York Silver Society. And after attending a dinner there, and on our way home, we decided we do something similar in Toronto. And by that time, we knew a lot of collectors and, of course, auction personnel. And above all, Peter Kalgren, who helped us enormously in the beginning and is still a very valuable support for the society. Richard was the first president, and I was, after a few years, the president later. And now we have Philip Chong, who is our president. We have a very exciting program, so check us out. We have a website, Silver Society of Canada, CA. And I want to say that Richard loved music. I shared that with him. And he not only collected silver, but also Canadian ceramics. He loved his house on the island where we always visited, me mostly during the Lily of the Valley time. He was always polite, he was always smiling, he was always helpful. We all liked him a lot, and we will miss him, and I hope he rests in peace.
Thank you very much, Dorothea. John, did you want to share some words with us? I'd like to introduce Dr. John Mawson from out west, British Columbia. Thank you.
Can you hear me all right? Okay. I first met Richard in the 90s when I was new here to Toronto. And when I arrived here a few weeks before my family, I did the round of some of the shops, and I was on the lookout for a straight set of Hanoverian pattern dessert spoons, and some of you will probably understand the folly of that quest. Um, the folk at Louis Wine Antiques gave me the name and telephone number of somebody called Richard. And that weekend I managed to catch up with him at an antique show out in St. Catharines. Well, he didn't have any Hanoverian dessert spoons, but we got talking, and 30 odd years later, we were still talking, and there was probably nothing that we didn't share stories about. We talked about his growing up in New Brunswick, the death of his brother. We talked about the time he spent out on the ice floes, getting rides on tugs on the river, and as long as that was okay, as long as he was home for, by dinner time. We talked about some of the trips, and of course we talked endlessly about silver. Some of the finds, the sales, and of course the ones that got away. There are always those ones.
I bet there wasn't too many of those.
I had the very good fortune to spend a week with Richard in London earlier this year. We went across to join a number of the Silver Society events. We at Burlington House, we were able to listen to a lecture by Patricia Ferguson, who I think is known to some of you. We spent an afternoon at Salters Hall and were able to handle some early silver. You mentioned frugal, but Richard really loved his big English breakfasts. And we would sit for a number of hours over those breakfasts and we would talk. And one of the things we talked about was the book that he was going to write, or that I was going to push him to write. I'd collected anecdotes over 30 years. I've written most of them down. But the idea was for Richard to put these into some sort of order. And so over breakfast one morning, we talked about the title of this book. Richard Flensted-Holder, A Life, that kind of seemed a little bit dry. Richard Flensted-Holder, Breast Pocket Dealer, well, yeah, that was probably a little bit too obtuse. But he really liked Richard Flensted-Holder, A Disorderly Life. And so that was going to be the title of the book. And I remember saying to him at one of those breakfasts, Richard, there is so much to write down. We've got to get it on paper now. Even if you live into your 90s, we might not get it all down. I know it's tempting, I'm tempted to think about what might have transpired if Richard had lived into his 90s. Maybe some more trips, more stories, maybe a book. I'm trying not to mourn what might have been. I'm trying to just be so grateful for the richness of the time that he had with me, and I suspect with all of you as well.
Thank you, John. You know, Richard would often turn to me if after something had happened, and he would say, "That would be one for the book if we could publish it." So I think there were a lot more unpublishable stories than publishable ones. But I'd like to give anyone an opportunity who hadn't approached me before. If you would like to share a memory, now would be the time. So if you would just like to come forward perhaps and introduce yourself and share a memory with Richard, now would be the time to do that. Please.
I was a near neighbor of Richard's, And at celebrations of life, I always learn much more about the people that we have lost than I knew, even if I lived close to them. And I hear about the silver, and I hear about the traveling, and hear about all the good friends. Haven't heard a word about the flowers. And they were much in evidence in our neighborhood. I was a professional gardener for a number of years, and I would help people out in their gardens, and I would say, those dahlias, what color are they? And the client wouldn't know. I said, well, didn't you put them there? No, Richard put them there. So I just wanted to share with you that our neighborhood was made colorful in that way with Richard's flowers, and I looked always out in the springtime to Richard organizing his pots and putting soil in and the dahlia tubers and the beautiful arrangements on the steps flanking his front door. So that's my cherished memory of Richard. Thank you.
Anyone else like to share a memory with Richard? This is Philip. Thank you, Philip.
Hello. So, as Dorothea mentioned, I'm the third president of the Silver Society of Canada. I first met Richard when I was a university student, and he used to come up to Montreal to do the Bonaventure show. And I would go there with friends, and we would sort of do the rounds. And I started speaking to Richard, and of course, as a student, the only thing you could afford at that time would be a spoon. And so Hanoverian spoons tend to be quite, what's the thing? So I actually bought a number of Hanoverian spoons that I still have in my kitchen drawer, which I use. And the earliest spoon in that drawer is a dog nose spoon, which also came from Richard. So I like to use the things that I've bought from him. And after moving down to Toronto from Montreal, I kept up that contact, and with the Silver Society, we would meet throughout the year. And Richard's presence was always, he was always cheerful, always had a smile, and was always very generous with his advice. And that's something I think we will all miss. With Richard's passing, there's a whole chapter in Canadian silver history that has passed. But like me, what we hold in our heart, we keep forever and will not forget. And that's, for Richard, it's something that we will forever remember in our hearts.
Thank you. Okay, Brian. Yes, please do.
I'll be rather brief, but in an add-on to the talk about Richard's flowers, unbeknownst to a lot of people and probably breaking the law, Richard found a way to bring some trilliums to the island. And to this day, I and a very few people know where they are, and it will remain our secret, but Richard was so proud of his trilliums.
Another secret that will go untold, unpublished. Well, we've heard some wonderful memories of our dear friend, most of you have known for a very long time. And we're going to listen to a piece of music in a moment, but it's probably appropriate now that we just take a moment to quietly reflect on some of those stories, the memories that were shared, perhaps say a silent prayer if you wish. And we're going to listen to a special song. It is a song of farewell, and it is called The Parting Glass. Godspeed, Richard, and thank you for taking us with you on your journey.